So the textbook talks about two different ways to approach the management of contracted relationships. So we have the partnering approach and the traditional approach. So in the partnering approach, we develop mutual trust with the group that we are outsourcing to. We have shared goals and objectives. We have a joint project team. We have high levels of interaction and open communication and a long-term commitment that allows us that opportunity to develop relationships which allow us to work towards continuous improvement. Under the traditional approach, we have suspicion and distrust. So each party is wary of the motive of the other. So we have this us versus them conflict. Each party's goals and objectives, they might be similar for the project. They're still geared towards what is best for myself as a team versus what is best for the project. We have independent project teams, so we don't have a project team that's working jointly together with a high level of interaction, but instead we have independent people. They're separated. We have managed interactions. We might have regular meetings, but we're not really together as a joint team. Communications are structured and guarded. And single project contracting is normal. So we don't create this long-term relationship with them. We contract project by project. And if they wanted to bid on a new project, they would have to rebid instead of us soliciting them for extra projects. Additional, whether we're able to objectively critique each other, or any objectivity is limited due to that fear of reprisal or lack of continuous improvement opportunity. So it's all about how we are able to develop relationships with the people we're outsourcing with. And is it a one-time project and every project they have to reapply and reapply and reapply and we never develop this relationship with them? Or do we have a relationship where we can build that they're joint partners with us and they recognize the mutual benefit of that opportunity? We need to communicate with people we're outsourcing with. So there are a lot of different strategies for that communication. We need to recognize cultural differences. So we can have very different things, not just organizational culture. So our org culture might be very different. One project might come from a very structured organization that has very rigid 8 to 5 hours, everyone behind a desk that whole time, where another org culture could be much more relaxed. People have flex time, flex scheduling. Some people work 8 to 5, some people work 10 to 7. We can also have international cultural differences. And we have time conflicts. So we looked at the time conflicts when we're across different time zones. We have cultural differences for meetings. So some cultures, it's okay to be late for meetings, where in other cultures, being late for a meeting would be considered extremely rude. So you have to negotiate those cultural differences. I worked with a group of students a couple of years ago that had projects with international companies. And one of the student groups were really frustrated with the company they were working with for that problem. One, the time difference meant that their meetings had to be at a really odd time. I think they had to meet at like 10 o'clock at night to make their Zoom meetings work. And then another thing was that the country that they were working with was very relaxed, did not have, okay, yeah, we said the meeting time would be this, but if I'm 10 to 15 minutes late, whatever, not a big deal. We don't get really excited about that. And so when you have really people on a meeting who are very strict about their schedules and that people be on time, if not even early, and you're working with people that are exactly the opposite. There can be a lot of conflicts in that communication. So making sure that you communicate that really upfront, choosing the right words, confirming your requirements. So especially from the RFP. So when we write an RFP, we want to be very specific about what the requirements are for this project and be consistent with them and able to build trust. We don't want to get the word out among companies that we say one thing in our RFP and then we require a completely different thing when it all comes down to it. And having very specific hard deadlines for communication and information. So when we create the project at first, we're setting the stage for specific for successful partnering. So we're team building. We want to build a collaborative relationship among all of the different project managers. So if I'm a project manager on a project and I'm outsourcing, that team I'm outsourcing to also has a manager. And I want to make sure that I've developed a communication plan with them and a collaborative relationship with them. So we're willing to work with each other. We want to be committed to the project. We want people who are also committed to our project and willing to work with us. And then we want to look at what stakeholders are involved and make sure that we expand our partnership commitment to include all of those other key managers and specialists that we might need for our project. Once we've started those, we need to sustain our relationship. So making sure that we don't create this we or this us versus them attitude in a project, but that projects are very much we. If we're able to co-locate, then we can co-locate. So this is where employees from different organizations work together in a same location. This is a very rare thing. So we want to establish mechanisms to ensure that our relationship survives any problems and setbacks. So what are our problem resolution plans? What are continuous improvement plans? Do we have joint evaluations? So how are we evaluating the people that we're working with and how are we evaluating the project as a whole? Making sure that we're available all the time and being consistent with all of the groups that we're outsourcing with. So as they're communicating with each other, they don't say, well, she's like yelling at me, but she's always really nice to you, and what those management practices are. When we have a project completion, we want to celebrate its success together. So find a way that we can hold a celebration where everyone can participate. Have a joint review of any accomplishments and disappointments for that project. So what kinds of things did we have working together? How can we get everyone involved? How can we recognize the people who contributed to the project completion? And then we want to establish those long-term partnerships. So those long-term partnerships are where we build relationships with specific outsourcing partners. So not that we're looking for a new outsourcing company every single time, but for subsequent projects, we can go out and build these partnerships. Now, dependent on what kind of organization we have different abilities to create those partnerships with outsourcing companies versus another. One thing that I'm thinking of is that government agencies have to follow very specific RFP compliance for government projects. And so even if we had worked with an outsourcing company in the past and we knew that their work was very, very good, we wouldn't be allowed to favor them in the bid project for a future project because that's frowned upon. And so they have to be independent bids. We can't say, hey, I'm going to put out this RFP. We've worked really well together in the past, and so make sure you put in a bid for it, and then we can hire you. Instead, all RFPs have to be independent. So depending on the kind of company that we work for or the kind of project management that we get involved in. But there are advantages to having those long-term partnerships. So some of those advantages are reduced administrative costs because then we don't have the costs associated with bidding and the selection process. We don't have to go through all that process of writing an RFP and putting it out there. We have more efficiencies because we already know who we can work with. We can talk to them about their schedules, and we create these improved communication, innovation, and performances just because we have this mutually benefiting relationship